Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I am Farid Younos, and today is October 4th, Monday, October 4th, 2021. And thank you for joining me. We are discussing about the issue, the issues of Afghanistan, and that the Taliban abandoned the media. More than 150 media entities stopped working. So this is not only against Islam, because Islam want people to express their views, express their opinion, express their political views. And there are many examples in the history of Islam, especially in the time of the Prophet. It's not only against Islam, but it's against human rights, and also it's about people laid off. Thousands and thousands of people laid off because these cameramen, reporters, broadcast managers, all these people are laid off because they don't have anything to do. So this is not only an economic setback, and at the same time it's against human rights and against Islam. So in contemporary world today, media is one of the most important aspects of a civil society. You can't call your country a civil society if there is no media, and if the media is controlled by the government. Well, they don't have a government yet because nobody recognizes them as a state. Today, in 10 days, it will be 2 months that they took over Kabul, but nobody recognized them as a state. Even their protectors like Pakistan and Qatar, they tried hard to convince the world to recognize Afghanistan as a state, but everyone rejected that. So that is very important. At the same time, as you know, last night, Sunday night, actually in Afghanistan, Saturday night, there was many clashes in northern Kabul, Khair Khana area, and some bomb exploded inside Kabul. So Kabul is not safe at all. It's not safe at all. So whether this fight is between the Taliban themselves, because they are different fractions, or it is Taliban and Daesh, but it can't be a third party. It's either the Taliban, between the Taliban, because they know how to implement bombs and explode bombs and commit suicide. They know that. They did it for the last 20 years, after all. And at the same time, as you know, it is Daesh that may be involved in Afghan politics, and they are involved in Afghan politics because what's happening here that you need to know, as my young fellow English-speaking group, is this: that the Taliban tried to detach themselves from Al-Qaeda and Haqqani and other groups. They tried. Why they tried? Because in the beginning of all these fighting, they were all one group. The Taliban were supporting Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda were supporting the Taliban. The leader of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, he was protected by the Taliban, and that's why Afghanistan was invaded by the United States of America in 2001, simply because they protected Osama bin Laden. If they had given Osama bin Laden at that time to Americans, as they call it, extradite Osama bin Laden to America, Afghanistan wouldn't be invaded by the United States. This is as simple as that. There's no rocket science equation in this matter that you should not understand why it was invaded. It was invaded because the United States was attacked by Al-Qaeda, and then the leader of Al-Qaeda and his group was protected by the Taliban at that time, and for many years, and so that caused the US to attack Afghanistan and invade Afghanistan. So they were one group, because these Muslim ideological groups, because Islam is not an ideology, that you need to know. Islam is not an ideology, because ideology, it's a man-made concept. It's a man-made phenomenon. Islam is an aqidah. It's just a belief system. But this belief system based upon knowledge, wisdom, and guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's not an ideology. Ideology, as you know, is a combined word, idea in logi. So so ideas are subject to proof, like capitalism, socialism, communism. These are all ideologies. Islam is not an ideology. Once you believe in Islam as a faith, as a aqidah or belief, and the only challenge that we have is that all these verses are interpreted according to time and space that we live in. And if we don't do that, then the Quran, astaghfirullah, 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 will be not a useful book. So all the verses are being interpreted according to contemporary world, something that the Wahhabis and Salafis and all these radical groups do not believe. And that's why they cause a chaotic world in the Muslim world, because they want to implement each verse as it is. They don't see that the verses are interpreted according to time and space we live in. So in the beginning, these people were all the same. But then Khalilzad, the envoy of United States in case of Afghanistan, he convinced them that you should detach yourselves. If you want to gain power, you have to detach yourself from Al-Qaeda and Haqqani and other groups. And at that time, they realized that they can't fight United States if they don't detach themselves. So they tried. They didn't manage to do that. They tried, at least by words, to show the world they're not with Al-Qaeda and all those other radical groups. So when they promised Khalilzad, the envoy, and that they are going to do that, so Khalilzad paved the way for them to make a contract or a truce, not a contract, a truce with the United States, not as a state, because when you read the truce between United States and the Taliban, in all sentences it says that United States do not recognize Taliban as a state, but a group called the Taliban. And all United States wanted that They should not use Afghanistan a base for terrorism, and they should not cooperate with other groups in the United States. They did not care. They did not care who ran Afghanistan, and that was the truce signed in February of 2020 between United States of America and the Taliban, not as a state. So one reason that United States do not recognize Taliban, because even in that truce, they do not recognize the Taliban as a upcoming state of Afghanistan. They did not recognize that. They were just, because the Trump administration, as you all know, Trump was a businessman. Business person, a very strong business person, or a committed business person, they are just looking for deals. They are looking for deals. They don't have compassion about democracy or human rights or feelings and or compassion. These things do not play in the mind of a business person when it comes to profits and gaining economically. That also you need to know. So sometimes businesses could be very rude and against people, and that's one reason that capitalism is always condemned in one way, is because they just look for their own profit, not for the sake of people or the poverty or destitute or the old or these things do not, as long as the profits play a role. So Trump was a businessman, and he wanted to make deals with some nations. And one of those deals was with North Korea. It was stunned the world when he traveled to North Korea. It was an astonishing, unacceptable trip he made because he wanted to make a deal with the leader of North Korea. By the same token, he made a deal with the Taliban. And he didn't care what will happen in Afghanistan after this truce or anything like that. So, but the Taliban fooled him in a sense that by word they say that they commit to their word, but actually they didn't, because this Islamic ideological principles, it's different than having just an aqidah. Just like I have an aqidah. My aqidah is telling me to be compassionate, to be kind to people, to not be aggressive, to not hurt somebody, to not have a bad intention to people. This is what my aqidah teaches me. But the Islamic quote-unquote ideology, as a matter of fact, Islam is not an ideology, but they made it an ideology. This ideology do not have that compassion in care, in feelings, in all that. So what happened after the truce, Al-Qaeda and all that, other Daesh and all these other groups, they got mad with the Taliban because they signed a truce with their foe, United States, against them. And that's why now they are in trouble. The Taliban are in trouble themselves. There are different factions of trouble. There are soft-minded Taliban, there are radical Taliban, there are Pakistani Taliban, there are Afghan Taliban. So just like the communist era of Afghanistan, that there were different brand of communists, now we have a different brand of Taliban. So what's happening in Afghanistan now? The world has not recognized Afghanistan. So In Italy rejected, Germany rejected, United States rejected, Great Britain rejected. All these major powers of the West rejected, and those are important countries because they play a major role in developing countries' economic issues. Even our neighbors like Iran, which is a strategic country in the Middle East, or Pakistan, their protector, so far as I speak, Monday, November, December the 4th, October the 4th, they have not recognized the Taliban. The economy dive-nosed. Girls are all at home after grade of 6 or 7. They're all at home. Women are confined in their home. Journalists and correspondents and reporters lost their jobs. There's no media to cover all these things. So it's a chaotic situation in Afghanistan in 21st century. So what should be done? My proposal is this, that the world powers, first of all, they should declare Afghanistan as a neutral and non-aligned country. Second, that means that the Afghanistan will not have access to weapons, will not purchase weapons, will not have a defense system, just like Switzerland of Europe, totally neutral and totally non-aligned. And after that, my proposal is this, that major powers, global powers, regional powers, they should get together with the assistance of the United Nations. They should secure Afghanistan and held an election, a nationwide election. In this election, it should be transparent and it should be observed and monitored by the United Nations. So to install a new government. From a structural point of view, I propose that since we are Muslims and we are Afghan Muslims, with the majority school of thought are Sunni Hanafi and 30% are Shia Jafari, they should declare that school of thought are both equal, both Shia and Sunni are equal, all tribes are equal, all men and women are equal before the law, and they should establish a sort of, as I always mentioned, an Islamic democracy. So people should feel safe, not alienated from their roots and culture, and at the same time take the steps for progress in prosperity and stability. We cannot deny Islam, and that's why in this national movement of Afghanistan, there's a group called National Movement of Afghanistan, Harakat Milli Afghanistan. They invited me to be a keynote speaker on their conference a few days ago, 30th of September. I rejected that because they did not mention about Islam. And I'm not getting along with no party if they do not mention Islam as a means for stability and security and progress, simply because we are a Muslim nation, whether we are Shia, 30% Shia or 70% Sunni, we are a Muslim nation. these school of thought like Shia and Sunni, these are personal things, and these are this hasn't got anything hasn't got anything to do with politics of the country. They are brothers and sisters. I see them as brothers and sisters. I see Shia and Sunni as the two beautiful wing of peace in Islam. So we can't ignore them, and we cannot rule the country with one school of thought like Sunni, like the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia does, or Iranian made the same mistake that the whole country runs by the Shias, because that's not fair to those who also say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. We are one people, religious denomination, like fiqh denomination. These are personal issues. It shouldn't be a national issue. So in freedom of expression, freedom of media, gender equality, tribal equality in Afghanistan, these are all I proposed as a principle of governance under the name of Islamic democracy. I think we are able to do that if we committed Muslim men and women are determined to fight for this cause. Because 20 years of exported democracy failed in Afghanistan. A radical movement of Taliban failed in the 1996 to 2001. Communism and socialism failed in Afghanistan. Even kingdom is failed because it was toppled by his brother-in-law, President Dawood. So now the time has come for a new, fresh idea, and that is Islamic democracy. And that is, we are really here that if they want to formulate an agenda for Islamic democracy, I will be the first person to contribute and make my contribution in suggestion and formulate a new system of government which is unlike any other government in the world. That is based on justice for all, including Hindus and non-Muslims. And Hindus and non-Muslims should be viewed and treated as equal to other citizens. So what we are talking here in the last few minutes I have, what we are talking here, we are talking about citizenship. We are not talking about inclusiveness. Because an inclusive government could have a few women or other ethnic group in the government, as we used to have in the previous government. We used to have a inclusive government. There were women, there were some other ethnic groups, they are Shias in the government, but that's not solving Afghanistan problem. Because Afghanistan should change from a political intellectual point of view. What's happening here that you have an inclusive government, but still the intellectuality, the political intellectuality is against masses of people. Outside, they control people. There's no freedom of expression. Outside, they are against Shias and they are against Sunnis. Outside, women are not equal to men. They just added, as Americans say, they added some color in the cabinet, but that's not good enough. We have to change the intellectuality of the government. And intellectuality of government should be based on citizenship. That every Afghan should be equal before the law. Men and women, Shia and Sunni, all tribes, everyone should be equal before the law and should be treated like that. And this is the difference between citizenship and inclusive government. An inclusive government that they keep promoting, even foreign governments promoting inclusive government. Well, the Taliban will bring 2-3 people from other ethnic groups, and they also bring 1 or 2 women with their burqa and hijab and all that. And they say, here, this is inclusive government. What do you want? We have a Hazara, we have a Tajik, we have Pashtun, we have women in the cabinet. Is that solving the problem? Not really. Because their agenda to rule Afghanistan is not based on equality. It's not based on justice. And this is what many people misunderstood between inclusive government and a citizenship. We should fight for citizenship for Afghanistan, not an inclusive government. Inclusive government is not solving our problems. So the situation in Afghanistan is very bad. Saturday night we had some explosions. There were some people, like 5 people in front of the Grand Mosque of Kabul was killed. Many people injured. We had some fight going on in northern part of the city, Khairkhana, and there are 2 episodes about that. One episode that the fight was between the Taliban, and one episode was this, that the fight was between the Taliban and the resistance movement by Ahmad Massoud. Because the resistance movement has not died. They control Panjshir, the Taliban control Panjshir, but they are not controlling the mountains of Panjshir. There's 2 different things. It's the city or the villages of Panjshir, they control. The mountain of Panjshir, they are not controlling. So the resistance is strong. I'm very much against war and bloodshed. But sometimes we need to fight, if not by the sword, by the pen and words, to not be exploited by a system of government that exploit people under the name of Islam. Islam is not a deen of exploitation, and it cannot be imposed on people. And one of the principles of Islamic democracy is that the government should not impose Islam on people. The government should establish security, not by the point of a gun, but by laws, and establish a strong economy so that people should have work and be busy and productive and save them from starvation. And third, a very strong education. So people should start learning. Those who are illiterate should become literate and start reading and writing, and eventually decide for themselves. We don't want that the government decides for us and how we should run our lives. There's a big difference between, quote unquote, an Islamic ideology and a true Islam that the Prophet brought to us in Medina at the time that he tried to establish a system of a political system for Muslims and non-Muslims, which will be the topic of our discussion, and I will introduce you with some books next week. So until next week, I wish you a very good week, and with your beautiful families, and enjoy life worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have a good intention in your heart, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala look at your intention, not your actions. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Farid Younos.